After decades of no movement in the case, could the DNA of the man and woman arrested last Thursday finally shed some light on the case of baby John, the infant found dead on a County Kerry beach nearly 40 years ago, and which gave rise to the nightmare done to Joanne Hayes and her family? On the line, news editor at Radio Kerry, Treasa Murphy, and also we're joined by the solicitor for the couple, Padraig O'Connell. We'll go to you first, Padraig. Good morning.
Morning.
You represent the man and the woman, the man in his 60s, the woman in her 50s. Are they a couple?
Yes.
And have been since that time?
They are a couple, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Now, tell me, because you've been reported widely as to saying no criminality has been admitted whatsoever in terms of what the Gardaí were asking of them.
Well, the Gardaí weren't asking anything of them past. The Gardaí arrested them on suspicion of murder. And I am saying categorically that no evidence to substantiate that suspicion was put before them during the course of the lengthy interviews when they were under arrest, detained in two Garda stations for the maximum 24 hours allowed by the law.
So no evidence was put before them, but they were interviewed, if you like, or interrogated, if you like. So what was the line of questioning?
I'm not going into the line of questioning, and I'm not saying they were interrogated. I'm saying they were interviewed.
They were interviewed, all right.
But they deny all and any allegation that might be made that they were involved in criminality and that they were in any way involved in any aspect of the murder, if that is so, of the baby.
All right. Was that you mentioned that no evidence was put before them, but was that the allegation that was put to them by the Gardaí?
That is the allegation. That the allegation had to be put to them because that was the reason they were arrested, on suspicion of murder.
And
they were detained under Section 4 on that basis.
Now, did they confirm or no comment whether or not they were the parents of the baby who became known as Baby John?
That's not an issue I'm going to speak about.
All right. Well, obviously what goes on within the confines of the Garda interview room, you can reveal however little or however much you want. If it should turn out, and obviously DNA samples have been given, I presume, by the couple?
Of course, on a voluntary basis.
Yeah. So if it should turn out that they were the parents, either or both of them, of this baby called John, what implications might that have, in your view, as their solicitor?
Well, of course, I'm not going to speculate until those results come back.
So, I can't ask you to speculate, but it would suggest, were the DNA evidence to prove that they were the parents of baby John, that they had to have some involvement in the events that unfolded 40 years ago.
I would reject that completely and categorically.
But if they were the parents, they surely had an involvement. I'm not saying in the criminality, but in the events as they unfolded 40 years ago.
I'm not going to go down that line of discussion or debate.
Okay, so we're not in a court of law yet, and perhaps never will be. What was the reaction of your clients to these fairly sudden arrests and their separation into two different Garda stations?
Well, I suppose I'll put it very simply to you, Pat, like this. A knock at the door, people at home doing their ordinary everyday evening business, never in a Garda station in their lives, never so much as a penalty point or a fine for a traffic violation, and suddenly they're being whisked off to two different Garda stations on suspicion of murder.
And do you believe that the Gardaí, obviously you do, but I'm wondering in what way they might have behaved differently while still pursuing an investigation which they thought worthwhile?
I don't have any difficulty with the Gardaí coming and knocking at the door. I don't have any difficulty with the Gardaí doing their job.
Do you think they might have done it differently then? You're saying that your clients were dismayed, if that's not too...
I didn't use the word dismayed.
No, I'm using that word as the most mild reaction that someone might have to the guards knocking at the door. In a less mild way.
They were shocked. Why were they shocked? Because they're innocent people.
Now, again, I'm not asking you to speculate, but I will just put it to you that if they were the parents of a child found on a beach, that there has to be some knowledge that that was indeed their child, whatever misadventures occurred to that child in the meantime, and they would have seen the unfolding of the terrible injustice done to Joanne Hayes.
Absolutely, and I am not commenting any further, but your use of the word misadventure, Pat, is misplaced.
What would be the appropriate word?
Well, I would suggest to you that you wait and see what the results of the DNA are, and at that point in time there may be further comment. But even suppose, and this is supposing, that the DNA is a match, it's a quantum leap from being the parents of a child to being...
Sure. No, I'm not suggesting for a moment that they were the perpetrators of what happened to baby John, but the forensic evidence, the medical evidence, revealed that the baby was stabbed in the heart 4 times and had suffered multiple other shallow wounds. So, that kind of unfolding drama, if the couple, whoever they may be, whether they're your clients or others, who realise their baby had been mortally wounded in this way, and then watching an unfolding saga, silence would not really be an acceptable option. That's your opinion, Pat? I think it's just a common view that is held at the moment, that to allow Joanne Hayes to be victimised in this way for so long, it took until the 21st century for her to get vindication. But anyway, how are your clients today? Because this has been a huge trauma for them.
Yes, it's a huge shock for them, and they hope to get back to their workplace as soon as possible. They hope to get back to normal living as soon as possible. But what's hanging over them, and this is why I'm calling on the file to be sent to the DPP, and I'm calling on her to have the file dealt with as expeditiously as possible, because I believe this will exonerate my clients. All right, well, time will tell. Do you have any indication from the Gardaí as to how quickly the DNA evidence will be analysed and so on and so forth, and how quickly a file might be sent? Because we've used the expression many times, justice delayed is justice denied. Precisely. I would not have any communication with the Gardaí at all. All right. But you will continue to represent your clients, I presume, in any ongoing legal proceedings? Absolutely. They have my full confidence. Padraig O'Connell, solicitor for the couple arrested last Thursday. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Treasa Murphy is news editor at Radio Kerry. Good morning, Treasa. Good morning, Pat. Now, this is a story that 40 years ago consumed the nation and continued to consume the nation during the Tribunal of Inquiry and so on. And we revisited it from time to time, particularly when the state and the Taoiseach of the time, once again Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, issued an apology. However vivid it might be for the nation as a whole, in Kerry, even more vivid, I would suggest. Absolutely. And there's been a very mixed reaction in Kerry to the news when it emerged on Thursday night that a man and a woman had been arrested in relation to the murder of baby John almost 39 years ago. Of course, as pointed out there, both have been released without charge, and a file is being prepared for the DPP. The variance of reactions is quite interesting. A lot of people who've contacted us on Radio Kerry, when we reported on it on the news and spoke about it on our morning show, Kerry Today, on Friday morning. We interviewed the family solicitor for the Hayes family, Pat Mann, and they felt it was unfair on Joanne Hayes and her family, who were of course wrongly implicated in the murder of the child, and they felt all this would disturb the family's privacy. Another viewpoint, and possibly allied to the viewpoint that this was unfair to resurrect, given that the Hayes family have lived their lives quietly and in privacy. Another viewpoint was that what good can be achieved now from establishing the circumstances that led to the child's murder, that we simply don't know the causes as of yet that led to baby John's birth and then his killing, and that there may be a very, very terrible story behind this horrific event. The people who've contacted us here on Radio Kerry, they've said, look, bear in mind the baby's mother could have been very young. She even could have been underage. Then, on the other hand, we have had people contact us on the station, Pat, to say that notwithstanding their circumstances,
possibly the very dark circumstances that may have led to baby John's birth. We need to remember that this boy, believed to be only 5 days old, he was found lifeless in a bag on White Strand Beach near Carsiveen, stabbed 28 times. That child is entitled to justice just like anyone else, and that for his sake, for that child, and let's remember as well, unfortunately, his headstone has been vandalised on a number of occasions where the child is buried in Holy Cross Cemetery in Carsiveen. For the sake of that child, for anyone else, justice and truth, it's very important that they need to be established. And you have people who do have a mix of both feelings. They want justice for the baby. They're conscious of possibly those very, very dark circumstances that led to the child's birth. But they also wish to close the chapter for the sake of the Hayes family. You also have people who are so young, because this is almost 40 years ago, Pat. I remember it, but so many people weren't even born when this happened. They may have been aware of the Garda review into baby John's death that was initiated in 2018, but they're not aware of the extraordinary circumstances of the 1980s. And I think Father Larry Kelly.
Yes, I heard his contribution. Go on.
Yeah, just to repeat what Father Kelly said at Mass in Carsiveen on Friday morning, he urged people not to rush to judgment over the case. That there was a lot of shame, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of moral judgment at the time, and he also spoke of the sadness and grief, and that we have to allow the Garda investigation, allow it progress, find what is uncovered, and that people should not engage in small talk and speculation. And that's another very clear message coming from some of our listeners.
The thought that occurred to me, and I thought his remarks were very sympathetic and very Christian in his approach, but you have to bear in mind that many of the social attitudes of the day were utterly influenced by the Catholic Church's attitude to morality at the time, which may have conditioned people to do things that they would not otherwise have done.
Yes. That's absolutely a factor, absolutely, Pat. But interestingly as well, we got one or two comments from people who made the point, they cautioned against smugness, what they saw as maybe smugness, maybe that's not quite the right word, or smugness and judgment of the 1980s, that from the viewpoint of 2023 we can look back and say, oh, they were terrible dark days, and we judge what happened then, and rightly so. As a local councillor, Norma Moriarty, said to us on Friday morning, Norma Moriarty is from Waterville, close to Carsiveen. There was a witch hunt against Joanne Hayes. The misogyny of the time was very clear. But a couple of listeners, a very small minority, but a couple of listeners made a point that we could look back and be smug about the climate of the 1980s, but in 2023 we may not be aware of what's going on in the lives of some individuals and families right now. And this kind of mantra that this could never happen in Ireland again, we shouldn't be so sure about this, that murder, a terrible murder, that the form of this tragedy would ever happen again now, and to bear that in mind.